As a concerned Filipino citizen, I must say, yes to internal self-determination and no external self-determination. Bangsamoro participation in the central government, Section 9, Article 6 of the Bangsamoro Basic Law provides, it shall be the policy of the central government to appoint competent and qualified inhabitants of the Bangsamoro in the following offices of the central government: at least one cabinet secretary, at least one in each of the other departments, offices, and bureaus holding executive, primarily confidential, highly technical, policy-determining positions, and one commissioner in each of the constitutional bodies. The recommendations of the Bangsamoro shall be channeled through the intergovernmental mechanisms. Under the Constitution, it is the President who is empowered to appoint members of his cabinet and heads of the various departments, offices, bureaus, and constitutional bodies. Even the members of the judiciary, the Sandigan Bayan, UECs, and so forth. Therefore, to require him to pick out from a particular sector of Philippine society like the Bangsamoro is a stark diminution of his power, which I believe is unconstitutional. Moreover, the specific selection from a specific sector of the population may be viewed as class legislation, which is also not in conformity with the law. A petition to accede by at least 10% of the people residing in an area contiguous to the core territory and being required to vote in a plebiscite for the purpose is enough for that area to be included as part of Bangsamoro. Would this not amount to a case of tyranny of the minority over the majority, considering that only a very small number of inhabitants of a contiguous area can legally bind the rest of the population through a plebiscite to accede to the Bangsamoro, much against their will? To be sure, I believe that would be undemocratic. The MILF cannot claim the right to represent and act in the name of all the groups of stakeholders, such as the MNLF, the traditional Muslim leaders or datos, the ulamas or religious leaders, the lumads or indigenous peoples. The BIFF, which has separated itself from the MILF and others in the absence of any formal declaration to that effect by each of them. For this reason, these groups are not bound by the MILF-GPH agreement, and since they will undoubtedly be affected adversely by it, the likelihood is they would oppose it and cause trouble, thus endangering the peace, the lasting peace the MILF-GPH agreement has hoped to achieve. Normalization. Normalization, according to the Annex, is the means of achieving the desired quality of life, including sustainable livelihood and political participation, and ensuring human security. It does not contemplate that in order to ensure lasting peace, so that socio-economic development can proceed in earnest, there must be disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, or DDR, of members of the military component of the MILF. The CAP is unlike the peace agreements forged between some foreign countries and the militant separatist groups they respectively dealt with. It seems to treat these battles as merely peripheral, if not anathema. On the other hand, because the DDRs were deemed imperatives, the foreign countries indicated them in their respective agreements clearly in a rather comprehensive and detailed manner. The agreement between the government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh Movement, or Jerican Aceh Merdeka, or GAM, is a case in point. It provided that GAM had to hand over at least 840 arms within 3 months after the agreement was signed, and this was completed. With regard to the covenant entered into between the United Kingdom on the one hand and Ireland, as well as Northern Ireland on the other, it clearly indicated that there had to be a total disarmament of all paramilitary organizations like the Irish Republican Army or IRA, and decommissioning of all arms in the possession of all these organizations in 2 years. And this was done. On decommissioning, it will be noted though that the annex directs the MILF to decommission its forces so that they are put beyond use. Decommissioning, however, is not only going to be parallel and commensurate to the implementation of all agreements of the parties. It is also to be carried out by a graduated and phased program. The 4 phases of the program relate to voluntary registration of firearms and not handing over of firearms. Not mentioned in the phasing out are high-powered guns, cruiser weapons, self-propelled guns, and the like. It thus becomes clear and evident that the process of decommissioning is going to be long, slow, and difficult, and only for small caliber rifles. And since it will not be implemented by both the MILF and the GPH in a joint manner, but by the MILF alone, there can be no telling when implementation will be completed, that is to say, if it will be completed at all. Meanwhile, that the long and uncertain procedure of decommissioning is supposed to be ongoing, the probability is not remote that the MILF may exploit the time to beef up its armaments and equipment, quantity and quality-wise, and fine-tune its military organization, the BIAF. And when the BIAF shall have achieved the status or category of a standard army, then, likewise, the probability is not remote that the MILF, confident of support from other countries, possibly including the United States of America, would now repudiate the agreements it has made with the GPH, claiming the latter's inability to comply with its obligations under those agreements, declare its independence, and establish an Islamic state in the Philippine South. On policing, law and order may be defined as a socio-political situation characterized by the absence of crime and lawlessness. A relatively lawful and orderly situation is indicated by low rates of crime and juvenile delinquency. All this should be the result of the effectiveness of the law enforcement system, including the legal social systems, as well as the family, the church, civic organizations, and so forth. On the other hand, peace and order is a socio-political situation characterized by the absence of organized violence. So, when, for instance, anti-government elements take up arms and go violent, the peace and order situation in the affected area is put in disarray as the normal activities of living break down. How to address this situation would then be a problem of the military and not the police, as it would not be merely a matter of enforcing the law and keeping order, but putting down violence that would have escalated to alarming proportions. Besides, the police are not so functionally trained and armed as to have the competency to deal with such a situation. The military referred to would perforce be the AFP for the simple reason that it is the only machinery of violence to the government of the Philippines. It is the one and only organized military force with legitimate existence under the Republic of the Philippines. It is the only government instrumentality mandated by the Constitution to protect the people and the state. Curiously, however, The Annex and Normalization provides that law enforcement and peace and order in the Bangsamoro shall be the primary function of the police force of the Bangsamoro. Ordinarily, a police force is equipped only with guns and small caliber firearms, like shotguns, to carry out law enforcement. But since the Bangsamoro Police Force has also to maintain peace and order, it can be armed without arousing suspicions with heavy weapons and equipment, possibly including armored vehicles, tanks, heavy mortars, artillery pieces, and even fixed-wing planes, helicopters, ships, and whatnot. In other words, the said provision grants the Bangsamoro the right and the opportunity for the build-up of a military force disguised as a police force that could well become the incarnation of what by then would be a decommissioned DIAF. Only this time, however, it would be a DIF much bigger and better led, united, trained, structured, armed and equipped army organization that is capable of engaging the AFP in case of a showdown if and when the Bangsamoro should decide to secede, declare independence, and establish an Islamic State. Moreover, the Annex and Normalization, particularly as regards policing, provides that the Bangsamoro Police Force shall be accountable before the law and that it shall be responsible both to the central government and the Bangsamoro government and to the communities it serves. And so the question arises, how can the central government hold the Bangsamoro Police Force responsible to it, since under the BBL, it is the Chief Minister who has the power to exercise not only operational control and supervision, but disciplinary action as well over the police force. This provision violates the Constitution, which mandates that there shall be one police force, nationally scoped and civilian in character, to be established and maintained. This police force is no other than the Philippine National Police, the chain of command of which is from the President to the Chief PNP and down to the lowest command level. The same provision which makes the Bangsamoro Police Force solely responsible for the peace and order or security of the area is closely related to some other provisions of the Annex. These are defense and external security. This is one of the 9 reserved powers of the central government. Note that this power is not inclusive. It excludes internal security. AFP units and troops are to be redeployed from or within the Bangsamoro in a manner that is consistent with a normal and peaceful life and the progress in the other aspects of normalization. Note that in the agreements forged by the government of Indonesia and GAM and between the UK and Ireland, redeployment was to be based on the requirements of security respectively, which I submit is the better principle of all. As used in their arrangements, security is implied as not only external but internal, for the reason that threats to it can come from within or from without anywhere. In Bangsamoro, the AFP is to retain only such installations as are necessary for national defense and security. Note that the provision does not specify which installations, bases, camps, training areas, temporary shelters, and so on, are to be retained. It is therefore capable of different interpretations, which could lead to trouble later. The Joint Normalization Committee shall set the criteria for the deployment of AFP units and troops from the former conflict areas. This has the effect of negating the principle that redeployment is based on the needs of security as determined by the central government. The central government and the Bangsamoro government shall establish protocols to govern the movement of the AFP in the Bangsamoro. What these protocols are have yet to be spelled out. Presumably, they will outline the procedure the AFP has to follow when conducting operations or establishing positions in the Bangsamoro. Such a procedure may entail steps to be observed before, during, and even perhaps after the conduct of operations. But whatever these protocols will be, they would have the effect similar to those resulting from the criteria of AFP deployment in the former conflict areas. The only difference maybe is the protocols are to be applied over the whole Bangsamoro territory. Moreover, and this I think is more important, the protocols could compromise military operations, exposing unnecessarily the operating troops in danger. A case in point is the Al-Barka Basilan incident. On 18 October 2011, some 40 Scout Rangers were dispatched to serve a warrant of arrest to the criminally accused and escapee Dan Laksaw Asmawi, the deputy head of the MILF 140th Base Command, known for his penchant for beheading his victims. Apparently, since he was believed to be with his men in an MILF territory, the troops had to ask permission to enter the premises in order to serve the warrant. Permission to enter was part of an MILF GPH arrangement earlier agreed upon with regard to troop movement in territories pertaining to the MILF. But in so asking permission, the Rangers but had unwittingly telegraphed their punches, thereby alerting Asmawi and giving him the chance to stage the ambush slaying of 19 of the Rangers, some of whom were tortured to death and decapitated. Recommendations. The Bangsamoro Basic Law should include a provision explicitly stating that the Bangsamoro or MILF renounces forever its avowed separatist policy and governing independence and pledges to remain under or be a part of the Republic of the Philippines. Disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, as enunciated by the United Nations, should be carried out jointly by the MILF and GPH through a process that has a deadline of accomplishment and managed by an international body acceptable to the two parties. 3. All the above-mentioned provisions of the MILF GPH agreements, in particular the FAB and CAB, on redeployment should be omitted or repealed. The reason, aside from what has been stated earlier, is they tend to prevent the Republic of the Philippines from exercising its sovereign power to preserve and enhance particularly the internal security of the whole country, including the Bangsamoro. Incidentally, on October 18, at the ANC talk show billed as Bangsamoro and Beyond, and hosted by Ses Drilon, the Bangsamoro Basic Law, MILF Vice Chairman Gatsali Jafar said, and I quote, "I think you have to force yourselves to trust us," unquote. Perhaps he did not need to say that. The MILF is aware that from the onset of the conflict many years ago, the government of the Philippines has already been pursuing a policy of peace and reconciliation. Oftentimes, it has leaned over backwards to accommodate MILF's wishes. And what better proof is there that the GPH has full trust and confidence in the MILF than the agreements signed with force and effect, including the BBL, now being deliberated by Congress. I, for one, have absolute faith in the goodness of all people, regardless of race, creed, and color. But in addressing such a sensitive issue with such profound implications as the problem of the Philippine South, prudence dictates that they should adopt an attitude of caution. And just as the GPA's trust is asked for, so should we also ask for the MILF to show that it can be trusted. This it can do by consenting to the inclusion in the BBL of a provision expressing explicitly that the Bangsamoro is a constituent part of the central government, that it renounces its original policy of separatism and goal of independence, and that it undertakes to decommission its combat elements with all their arms removed from their possession, stored perhaps under lock and key until they are converted into plowshares, so to speak. Also in that talk show, Presidential Advisor and the Peace Process Secretary Deles expressed his sentiment on the BBL, her sentiment on the BBL, alluding to her newly born grandson. As I understood it, she said in effect that it was her wish that the decades-old strife on Mindanao should now be brought to a final closure so that the setting can be laid out for the transformation of the entire Filipino nation. With the transformation, it would now be possible for everyone, including her grandson and the generations after him as well, to live under the blessing of peace and unity, friendship and understanding, progress and prosperity. Your Honors, I could not have been more touched, and I share in full the good Secretary's sentiments. And if I may be allowed to add to her wish, let me say that it is my fervent hope too that my three sons, who are grandsons, will not years later spit on my grave for not having done in my lifetime even only a little action to safeguard the solid territorial integrity of the Philippines, our mother country, ang ating inabay. Thank you.